Hey guys, it is Sh0tee here. Welcome to episode 3 of Sh0tee Talks Anime. Today I'm going to be talking about Gakkougurashi. I believe it's only one word. Before I start, however, I'm going to warn everyone that there will be spoilers in this review. It is almost impossible to talk about this series without giving out spoilers. So if you're still to watch this and want to avoid spoilers, click off this video now. Gakkougurashi was an anime released in 2015 and was produced by Studio Lurch, known perhaps by the anime adaptation of Danganronpa. It came from a manga series of the same name which started its life in 2012 and is still going on today, written by Norimitsu Kaihao. Gakkougurashi roughly translates to school life in English. Now, despite my channel being focused on the retro sides of gaming and anime so far, I actually have no preference on what era a game or anime is made in. I actually do like a lot of the anime coming out these days, so these reviews that I do can be based on any anime from pretty much all time periods. So with that being in mind, let's get straight into the review. Gakkougurashi is best watched when completely blind on what's going to happen. If I thankfully was one of those people and watched the first episode in which 10 minutes in I thought it would be something similar to Love Lab. However, towards the end of the episode, I soon found it to be a show that involved zombies. At the time, I thought it would be still a light show. I didn't think anyone was actually going to be at risk and the zombie outbreak would be over by the end of the show without anyone getting into real trouble. And boy was I wrong, because by the time the third episode ended, I knew that I was going to have to rethink that position, and around the 6th episode, I finally realised it was going to be a lot darker than I thought it would be originally. This series is often compared to the Madoka Magica series, which I can see as they both start out cutesy, however start to get dark pretty quickly. However, I would rate Madoka Magica better, as it seemed like the characters would develop better, and the story made more sense to me. Perhaps the biggest plot point for me was the cause of the attack. It turns out that it was a biological attack, and the school just happens to be well equipped for people to survive something like this. This raises two questions for me. Who actually made the attack happen is not directly mentioned. It could be the school itself, since why would they have an evacuation plan for something like this, but then why would they get the weapons? Or how would they get the weapons, I mean? The second question is how did the people that survive actually survive? They were all in different sectors of the school when the zombies started coming out alive, and one main character was actually out of school when the attack started happening. Why didn't more people survive? It may have been explained, and I didn't catch on. However, I did do a backtrack of certain scenes, and I still couldn't catch on to it. Despite this, however, the story does take twists and turns that did keep me on edge, and a lot of the things that did surprise me. This is an entertaining story, and one that I'd definitely like to see again, with different themes, such as different identity or fictional characters. Now, let's get on to the characters themselves. There are 4 main girls in the series, 2 added background girls who add onto the plot, and a dog, who is actually pretty important to the story. Our main character is Yuki, a high school senior, and believe me, she does not look her age at all, although I don't really care about that, who may be described as the average moe type character. However, she does go deeper than that, since she actually does have some good reasons on why she acts that way in the situation she's in. She is delusional because of a certain event that happens to her, which I'll get to later, and sees the world a lot differently to all the other characters in the show. She's a good character, although she can get a bit annoying at times. My personal favourite character, and perhaps the second most important character, was Miki. Referred to as Mikun by Yuki, in which I thought she was making a Nintendo reference there. She's not technically in part of the main gang in the beginning. She is actually at a mall when the attacks take place. She, along with her best friend Kei, take shelter in a room around the top floors of the building. Kei, however, is tired of just surviving and runs out to a presumable death. Miki, however, stays in the room and starts to lose her mind until the gang, who just happened to take a trip down to that mall, comes out and saves her. I believe that she has the most development of all the characters, and all of her feelings towards certain characters do make sense due to her personality in her past. There is also Kurumi, the main fighter of the group, due to the fact that she happens to be very good with her shovel that she tends to fight with and carries around everywhere, and also happens to be the favourite character of a lot of people who watch the show. She has a crush on someone who happens to turn into a zombie, however this is forgotten about after the start of the series. She is also the one in the main 4 who has the highest chance of dying. She happened to get bit by a zombie dog, and I'll explain that when I get to him. However, she is cured by the end of the show. She didn't feel as important to me, which is why she is not my favourite character, however I do see the appeal of her. The last main character is Yuri. She seemed to be an important character in terms of how all the other characters acted. However, in regards to a few scenes, she didn't really seem that interesting to me. I don't hate her by any means, however I feel they should have done a lot more with her. She was interesting, however, around the end, and I did feel sorry for her when Kirimi was infected and, well, basically Yuri was actually killed her due to a request by Kirimi that was explained during the show. She apparently does get more interesting in the manga, however I've not read this yet as I don't really read manga in general. There are also two important side characters. First up is Sakura, a teacher who helps correct up the club, however shortly after this she dies. However, she still exists inside Yuki's mind and is shown as a normal character throughout the first half of the show. I didn't quite get it the first time, however looking back, there is constant foreshadowing with the fact that she's always interrupted by Yuri and Kurumi during these scenes, in which I thought was just a gag the first time I was watching. She also appears as a zombie at the end, and is pretty important, as like the most important zombie in fact. I see the point of having her character there, although I felt as though they could have done a lot more with her. There's also Taramaru, a dog who Miki found at the mall. At first, Miki snaps at Taramaru after just losing Kei, which leads Taramaru to ignore her until their relationship builds back up during the show. He then turns into a zombie, bites Kirimi, and is then cured, although dies in Miki's lap shortly after due to how long he was affected for. A lot of people complain how Taramaru took up a lot of screen time. I felt like he was decently developed enough, and I didn't really mind it. The art style is at a high quality, something to expect in 2015, although the art style did feel strange at times. For instance, Yuri's eyes seem to be closed a lot of times, something which seems off-putting since there's no real reason for it, and none of the other characters seem to have this problem. However, for the most part, it remains at a high quality. The animations are so high quality, I didn't really notice anything wrong with it. The voice actors are good and fit the characters well. They are mostly newcomers, however Kirimi is voiced by the same actor as Chio from Gekken Shoujo Nozaki-kun, which is something I would have never guessed if I didn't look it up. In conclusion, this is a very good show. I won't say it's the greatest thing I've ever seen, however going in completely blind and not knowing what to expect, I am very happy with the experience that this show turned out to be. If you like Madoka Magica, watch this. It may not be as good, but it should be able to fill that hole in your heart if you're begging for something like that. I was debating whether I should give the show a 7, a 7.5 or an 8. However, looking back at it all, I'm going to give this show a flat 8. Watch the show if you haven't, and did not mind the spoilers I explained. It is not a show to be missed. Thank you guys for listening to the review. I thought it would be a show that I would do for obscure anime, however now I'm focusing this series on any anime I watch. Hopefully every anime I watch from here on out, I'll eventually do a review on it. The next sit down with Sh0tee episode should hopefully be out tomorrow or Tuesday, so I'll see you guys then.